You started before. You have. Maybe it was the gym, maybe it was waking up early, a new diet, a new skill, business idea, reading habits. You started with real energy, not fake motivation, but actual, genuine excitement. You told yourself this time was different, and for a while, maybe it was. And then something happened. Not a dramatic event, not a crisis, just resistance. A hard day, a moment where it stopped feeling easy and started feeling like actual efforts. And somewhere in that moment, quietly, you stop it. And the story you told yourself afterward was probably something like, hmm, I just don't have the discipline, or I'm not that kind of person, or the classic one, I will start again on Monday. But what if none of that is actually the problem? What if the reason you quit when things get hard has almost nothing to do with willpower and everything to do with the story you have about who you are? Today's question: why do I quit when things get hard? Here is what the self-help industry gets almost completely wrong. It treats quitting like a supply problem, like you just need more motivation, more discipline, a better routine, a stronger why. So it sells you tools, habit trackers, accountability partners, 75 hard challenges. And some of that stuff helps for a while. But if you have ever done a challenge like that and then gone right back to your old patterns the moment it ended, you already know the tools was not the real solution. Because the problem was never the tool, the problem is deeper than that. Think about it this way: two people start the same gym program on the same day, same schedule, same workout, same goal. 6 months later, one of them is still going, the other quits in week 4. So, what's the difference? Willpower, genetics, or life circumstances? Sometimes, sure, maybe. But in most cases, the real difference is this: the person who stayed had started to see themselves as someone who trains, that becomes part of their identity. The person who quit never made their shift. They were always trying to get fit, never a person who works out. That gap between trying to do something and being someone who does it, that's what this episode is about. Let's start with how habits actually work, because I think most people have a slightly broken mental model of this. The popular version goes something like: pick a goal, repeat a behavior consistently, which becomes automatic, done. And that's not wrong exactly. Repetition does matter. But it misses the most important variable, which is why you are repeating the behavior in the first place. There is a distinction that the author James Clear makes in his work on habits, and it's one of the clearest framings I have come across. He separates outcome-based habits from identity-based habits. Outcome-based means you are trying to achieve something. Lose 10 kilos, read 20 books, have a certain amount of money. The focus is on the result. Identity based means you are trying to become someone, a healthy person, a reader, someone who manages money well. The focus is on the self. And here is why that matters. When your habit is outcome based, every hard day is a threat to the goal. You miss a workout and you are further from the target. You eat badly and you have ruining the goal. So the outcome becomes fragile because life constantly gets in the way of goals. But when your habit is identity based, a hard day is just a hard day. You miss the workout, but you are still a person who trains. You will be back tomorrow. The identity is stable even when the behavior is not. That's an entirely different relationship with consistency. Now, here is where it gets really interesting and also a little uncomfortable. If identity is the key, then the question becomes why it is so hard to change your identity. Why you can't just decide I'm a disciplined person now and have that stick with you. Because your brain is actively protecting the identity you already have. This is not a metaphor, it's a well documented psychological mechanism. And we have a deep need for consistency between our self concept and our behavior. When we act in ways that contradict how we see ourselves, it creates a kind of internal friction. Psychologists call it cognitive dissonance, and the brain resolves that friction not by updating the identity, but usually by pulling the behavior back in line with the old self image. So, if deep down you see yourself as someone who is not athletic, and you have held that belief in school, maybe since the first time you got picked last, then every time you show up at the gym and push hard, your brain is quietly feeling that way as an exception, not who you really are. And eventually, when things get hard enough, the behavior snaps back to match the identity. So you quit. Not because you failed, but because you were never in your own mind the person who would succeed at this. The quitting in this case is not weakness, it's loyalty to an old story. So, if the problem is an outdated identity, how do you actually change it? Because just believe in yourself is not an answer. That's a posture, not a strategy. The shift is to flip the order. You update the identity first, even before the results are there. Not by lying to yourself, but by casting small votes. Every time you do the thing, even a tiny version of it, you are adding a piece of evidence to a new story about who you are. You went to the gym even when you don't feel like it. That's a vote for I'm someone who show up. You cooked a meal instead of ordering. That's a vote. You read 10 pages before bed instead of scrolling. That's a vote. Here is what actually works, and it's not the opposite of how most people approach this. Most people wait for results before they update their identity. They think, once I have lost the weight, then I will see myself as a healthy person. Or once I have saved enough money, then I will consider myself good with money. They are waiting for the evidence to arrive before they accept the new story. But the evidence almost never comes fast enough. And in the meantime, the old identity keeps winning. No single vote wins the election, but enough of them accumulated over time, and the new identity starts to feel real. Because it's real. You have been building it, one small action at a time. The habit is not the destination. The habit is the proof of who you are becoming. So, why do you quit when things get hard? Not because you are weak, not because you lack discipline, not because you need a better system or a harder challenge or someone to hold you accountable on Instagram. You quit because in the hard moments you were still operating from an old identity that did not include the version of you who pushes through. The habits was new, the self-image was not. And when those two things are in conflict, identity wins almost every time. The real work, the work that nobody talks about because it's not flashy and it does not fit in a 30-day challenge, is the slow, repetitive work of building a new story about who you are through action, not through visualization, not through affirmations, not through waiting until you feel ready, through showing up in small ways consistently enough that the new identity stops feeling like a custom and starts feeling like a skin. Discipline is not a personality trait you either have or you don't. It's an identity you build, one decision at a time. The question is never, do I have what it takes? The question is, who am I becoming with every choice I make today? Here is your one thing, not a habit to build, just one question to ask yourself today. Think about something you keep starting and stopping, a behavior you want to make consistent. Now, ask yourself honestly, do I see myself as someone who does this, or do I see myself as someone who is trying to do this? Because that gap between being and trying is where most people live, and it's where consistency dies. You don't have to solve it today, but notice it. Notice the language you use about yourself around this thing. Notice whether you describe it from the outside, I'm working on going to the gym, or from the inside, I train. That language is not just description, it's construction. You are building the identity every time you open your mouth about it. Start there, change the story first, and let the results follow. That's it for today. If this hit something real for you, share it with someone who needs to hear this. See you in the next one.